미디어 심리학 15주 2차 강의를 시작하겠습니다. 챕터 15는 정신장애의 치료입니다. 비행공포증을 가진 사람들에게 가상현실 치료는 큰 도움이 될 수도 있습니다. 가상비행 동안에 치료자는 옆에 앉아서 마치 진짜 비행기 탑승처럼 어떤 일이 일어나는지를 설명합니다. 치료자는 환자가 스스로를 불안하게 만드는 비행기 여행의 여러 단계를 자신의 속도에 맞춰서 진행할 수 있게 격려합니다. 환자는 여러 주에 걸쳐서 치료를 받았고 가상여행 마지막 회기에 가상 비행기에서 더 이상 불안을 느끼지 않았습니다. 치료자의 격려에 힘입어서 그녀는 진짜 비행기를 탔습니다. 그녀의 공포는 예전같이 강하지 않았고 성공적으로 비행을 마칠 수 있었습니다. 사람들은 신체적 증상이 있으면 병원에 가지만 정신장애가 있는 경우에는 병원에 잘 가려고 하지 않습니다. 연구 결과에 따르면 5명 중 1사람은 어떤 형태의 정신장애를 앓고 있다고 합니다. 정신장애와 관련된 개인적 비용과 사회적 부담은 상당합니다. 사람들은 자신의 병이 치료를 받아야 한다는 것을 인지하지 못할 수 있습니다. 도움을 받지 못하게 하는 믿음이나 환경이 치료에 대한 장애물일 수 있습니다. 자신이 문제가 있다고 인정한 사람들도 어디서 도움을 받아야 할지 모를 수 있습니다. 때로는 도움을 찾았더라도 가장 효과적인 치료를 받지 못할 수 있습니다. 심리치료자 혹은 정신건강 전문가는 다양합니다. 심리학자도 있고 정신과 의사도 있으며 사회사업가, 상담가 등이 있습니다. 정신건강 전문가를 선택하기 전에 조사를 하고 현명하게 선택할 필요가 있습니다. 치료자와 나의 문제가 맞는지 질문을 해야 합니다. 적절한 치료를 찾는 것은 가장 좋은 수박을 고르는 것과 같다고 합니다. 치료적 접근은 크게 2가지로 나뉩니다. 심리치료는 사이코테라피라고 하고 당면한 문제로부터 회복하거나 지지를 제공하려는 목적으로 치료자와 심리적 문제로 고통받는 사람 사이에 이루어지는 상호작용입니다. 절충적 심리치료는 에클렉틱 사이코테라피라고 하는데 환자와 문제에 따라 다양한 형태의 치료에 기술을 사용합니다. 의학적, 생물학적 치료는 정신장애를 약물이나 수술로 치료합니다. 심리학이 발달하기 전에는 하이드로테라피처럼 야만적인 방법을 사용하기도 했습니다. 강박증 치료에는 심리학적, 의학적, 생물학적 방법들이 모두 사용될 수 있습니다. 강박증에 대한 잘못된 상식이 무엇이고 치료 방법에는 어떤 것이 있는지 알아보도록 하겠습니다.
There's a common misconception that if you like to meticulously organize your things, keep your hands clean, or plan out your weekend to the last detail, you might have OCD. In fact, OCD, which stands for Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, is a serious psychiatric condition that is frequently misunderstood by society and mental health professionals alike. So let's start by debunking some myths. Myth 1. Repetitive or ritualistic behaviors are synonymous with OCD. As its name suggests, obsessive compulsive disorder has 2 aspects: the intrusive thoughts, images, or impulses known as obsessions, and the behavioral compulsions people engage in to relieve the anxiety the obsessions cause. The kinds of actions that people often associate with OCD, like excessive hand washing or checking things repeatedly, may be examples of obsessive or compulsive tendencies that many of us exhibit from time to time. But the actual disorder is far more rare and can be quite debilitating. People affected have little or no control over their obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors, which tend to be time-consuming and interfere with work, school, or social life to the point of causing significant distress. This set of diagnostic criteria is what separates people suffering from OCD from those who may just be a bit more meticulous or hygiene obsessed than usual. Myth 2. The main symptom of OCD is excessive hand washing. Although hand washing is the most common image of OCD in popular culture, obsessions and compulsions can take many different forms. Obsessions can manifest as fears of contamination and illness, worries about harming others, or preoccupations with numbers, patterns, morality, or sexual identity. And compulsions can range from excessive cleaning or double checking to the fastidious arrangement of objects or walking in predetermined patterns. Myth 3. Individuals with OCD don't understand that they are acting irrationally. Many individuals with OCD actually understand the relationship between their obsessions and compulsions quite well. Being unable to avoid these thoughts and actions, despite being aware of their irrationality, is part of the reason why OCD is so distressing. OCD sufferers report feeling crazy for experiencing anxiety based on irrational thoughts and finding it difficult to control their responses. So what exactly causes OCD? The frustrating answer is, we don't really know. However, we have some important clues. OCD is considered a neurobiological disorder. In other words, research suggests that OCD sufferers' brains are actually hardwired to behave in a certain fashion. Research has implicated 3 regions of the brain, variously involved in social behavior and complex cognitive planning, voluntary movement, and emotional and motivational responses. The other piece of the puzzle is that OCD is associated with low levels of serotonin, a neurotransmitter that communicates between brain structures and helps regulate vital processes such as mood, aggression, impulse control, sleep, appetite, body temperature, and pain. But are serotonin and activity in these brain regions the sources of OCD or symptoms of an unknown underlying cause of the disorder? We probably won't know until we have a much more intimate understanding of the brain. The good news is there are effective treatments for OCD, including medications which increase serotonin in the brain by limiting its reabsorption by brain cells, behavioral therapy that gradually desensitizes patients to their anxieties, and in some cases, electroconvulsive therapy or surgery when OCD doesn't respond to other forms of treatment. Knowing that your own brain is lying to you while not being able to resist its commands can be agonizing. But with knowledge and understanding comes the power to seek help, and future research into the brain may finally provide the answers we're looking for.
심리치료는 치료자에 따라서 사용하는 방법이 다를 수 있습니다. 가장 많이 사용되는 방법이 에클렉틱, 절충적 방법이고 두 번째가 사이코다이내믹, 정신분석적 방법입니다. 세 번째가 카그니티브, 인지적 방법입니다. 정신역동적 치료는 프로이트와 그의 추종자들에 의해서 개발되었습니다. 정신역동적 심리치료는 사이코다이내믹 사이코테라피라고 합니다. 일반적으로 환자들에게 어린 시절의 사건을 조사하고 자신의 심리 문제에 대한 통찰을 갖게 고무합니다. 치료의 목적은 무의식적 기억과 충동, 소망, 갈등에 대해서 통찰을 발달시키는 것입니다. 정신분석에서 인간은 공격적이고 성적인 욕구를 가지고 태어나며 이것은 어린 시절 동안 방어기제의 사용으로 억압되어 있다고 봅니다. 통찰은 몇 가지의 기술을 통해서 발달합니다. 자유연상과 꿈의 분석과 저항의 분석입니다. 저항은 레지스턴스로 불쾌한 무의식적 사건들을 맞닥뜨리는 것이 두려워서 치료에 대한 협조를 꺼리는 것으로 간주합니다. 전이 트랜스퍼런스는 분석가가 내담자의 인생의 주요한 인물이 되고 내담자가 무의식적 아동기 환상에 근거해서 분석가에게 반응할 때 발생합니다. 처음에는 프로이트를 따랐지만 그로부터 분리되어 나온 여러 제자들이 심리치료에 기여하였습니다. 칼 융은 집단적 무의식을 강조하였습니다. 애들러는 정서적 갈등이 열등감의 지각과 연관된다고 했습니다. 클라인은 상실과 학대에 대한 원시적인 환상이 정신장애를 일으키는 중요한 요소라고 믿었습니다. 호네이는 사회와 문화에서 남녀의 차이를 강조하였습니다. 사이코다이내믹 치료가 어떻게 진행되는지에 대한 전문가의 말을 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
Psychodynamic psychotherapy is a depth psychology, and it's a talking therapy which has its roots very firmly in original Freudian psychoanalysis. So in Vienna in the 1890s, Freud developed this idea of personality not actually being born and a given, but something that evolved and could be influenced by your early environment. And from that, he came up with theories of drives and repression and, most importantly, the unconscious. And psychodynamic psychotherapy draws upon those influences in that it thinks about the psyche as being dynamic, as being able to move and shift, but that there's an unconscious component to it. That means that your conscious mind, your brain, isn't always in charge, in control of how you think and how you behave. So in a psychodynamic psychotherapy, the client will be encouraged to talk about their early memories and their early relationships. And they will be working collaboratively with the therapist in what's called the transference relationship. So the therapist will be trying to encourage those early dynamics, those early ways of functioning, early memories, thoughts, dreams, feelings, things that influenced you in childhood, which may have seemed unimportant at the time, but actually are having an impact on the way in which you're living and functioning in the world today.
현대의 심리치료는 전통적인 정신분석과 다릅니다. 치료자와 내담자는 얼굴을 마주보고 않습니다. 치료는 덜 집중적입니다. 통찰보다는 증상의 완화를 치료의 목적으로 보고 내담자에게 지지나 조언을 제공합니다. 내담자의 진술을 무의식적 충동으로 해석할 가능성은 낮습니다. 행동치료는 비헤이비어 테라피라고 하는데 질병 행동은 학습된 것이며 관찰 가능한 부적응 행동을 보다 생산적 행동으로 바꾸는 것을 통해서 증상 완화가 가능하다고 가정하는 치료입니다. 행동치료의 목적은 원하지 않는 행동을 제거하기와 바람직한 행동을 증가시키기가 있습니다. 토큰 경제, 토큰 이코노미는 내담자에게 바람직한 행동에 대해서 나중에 보상으로 바꿀 수 있는 토큰을 제공하는 행동치료의 한 형태입니다. 원하지 않는 감정 반응 줄이기는 노출치료, 익스포저 테라피로 감정을 유발하는 자극을 직접적으로 그리고 반복적으로 직면하는 것으로 결국에는 이로 인해서 감정 반응을 줄이는 치료 접근 방법입니다. 인지치료는 코그니티브 테라피라고 하는데 내담자가 자신과 타인 세계에 대해서 가지고 있는 왜곡된 생각을 알아차리고 이를 고치도록 돕는 심리치료 형태입니다. 인지적 재구조화는 Cognitive Restructuring이라고 하는데 내담자에게 부정적 감정을 유발하는 자동사고, 가정과 예측에 대해서 스스로 질문하게 가르치고 이 부정사고를 보다 현실적인 긍정적 믿음으로 바꾸게 돕는 치료 방법입니다. 마음 충만 명상은 마인드풀니스 메디테이션인데 내담자가 매 순간 현재에 충실하여 자신의 사고, 감정, 감각을 인식하고 문제가 되기 전에 증상을 깨달을 수 있도록 가르칩니다. 인지행동 치료는 Cognitive Behavioral Therapy라고 하는데 약자로 CBT입니다. 인지적 방법과 행동적 방법을 섞어서 사용합니다. 문제 중심이며 활동 중심입니다. 여기서 인지행동 치료인 CBT를 설명하는 동영상을 보도록 하겠습니다.
Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is the bread and butter of all psychotherapeutic modalities. This is because it's one of the few empirically valid talk therapeutic practices proven in clinical trials to effectively treat depression and anxiety. Certain fundamental aspects of CBT have been identified in various ancient philosophical traditions, particularly in Stoicism. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus believed that logic could be used to identify and discard false beliefs that lead to destructive emotions. This influenced the way modern CBT therapists identify cognitive distortions that contribute to depression and anxiety. CBT was originated from Aaron Beck in cognitive therapy, which was later developed into CBT, and Albert Ellis, who created Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, or REBT, and came up with the ABC method. Let's look at an example of this, starting with the activating event. Let's say your girlfriend tells you to put the toilet seat down. A lot of people know this scenario. After the event occurs, it goes through our filter of perceptive beliefs, where we add subjective meaning to the event with our thoughts. A lot of guys would have an error in thinking and take it personal by saying something like, "She thinks I'm lazy." Then the resulting emotion would be anger, and you saying something like, "Why the hell should I? She's such a nag." Then finally, the resulting behavior would probably be a fight. Beck emphasized the importance of two people having drastically different thoughts about similar events based on our beliefs and the way we see the world. Therapists attempt to make the client aware of these negative thoughts or cognitive errors. One technique is to challenge them by simply reframing them. Let's look at a couple more of these beliefs that don't coincide with reality. Let's say one morning you wake up to birds chirping and you're angry. You're angry because you don't want to go to work. Then later that day, it begins to rain, and you just can't help but complain about that too. But what if you got a full night's sleep, and the first thing you did in the morning was realize how grateful you are to have another day to experience life? And then when it inevitably rains later that day, it reminds you of your childhood stomping in puddles, and you think to yourself, this is awesome. Humans are very emotional creatures. We make decisions and perceive our world based off how we feel in the moment. Major companies know this, so they market to people's emotions rather than their logic. We see the world through the lens of our emotions. This is known as a mental filter or emotional reasoning. We also tend to make assumptions about how good we are at something or about how an event will go based on previous similar events. However, when reality goes against our expectations, we become sad, angry, and depressed. These assumptions are known as jumping to conclusions. Have you ever been late to work, and while you're rushing there you think, oh my gosh, my boss is gonna get mad at me, he's gonna yell at me, then I'm gonna get fired, then I'll probably end up homeless on the streets. People who do this exaggerate the importance of problems, shortcomings, and minor annoyances. This is known as magnification or catastrophizing, where we think of the worst possible outcome in a given situation. CBT works because it makes our oftentimes unaware internal processes and habitual behaviors noticeable. And it shows you that each of these processes are all connected to each other. However, there is one criticism that I want to point out to you about CBT. Recent research by Jonathan Haidt, who wrote the book Happiness Hypothesis, says that our emotions actually are the old software that has been developing for thousands and thousands of years. And our higher cognitive part of the brain in the frontal part of the lobes is like the new software. So in reality, what really happens is an activating event occurs, we always experience the emotion first. Then our cognitive process comes in like a little lawyer to explain that said emotion. We may not be able to control how something makes us feel at first, but we can choose how to think and act on those feelings.
가상현실 기술이 급속히 발전하면서 VR을 치료에 활용하는 사례도 늘어가고 있습니다. 관련 동영상을 보도록 하겠습니다.
Amanda Green lives with pain.
If I don't have nerve pain, I might have joint pain. If I'm not having joint pain, I might have headaches.
The unrelenting pain is a symptom of lupus, an autoimmune disease where a patient's own immune system attacks the body. She participated in a study to see how VR can help with pain.
It worked. It works for me.
VR creates a distraction for her pain, and the content teaches her breathing techniques that also helps.
If it helps with the pain or not.
Brennan Spiegel, a gastroenterologist at Cedars-Sinai, says VR is more than just distraction. He heads the hospital's virtual reality program.
Abdominal pain, discomfort, GI symptoms in some cases are related to mental state. The brain and the gut are constantly communicating. Something like virtual reality actually can intercede in the brain-gut axis and sort of rewire the neural circuitry in a way that helps to reduce abdominal pain. Virtual reality can reduce pain, can reduce blood pressure, and now we're looking to see can it do really important things like reduce the need for opioids.
But could VR also be addictive?
We have not seen abuse amongst our patients who are using it for therapeutic purposes.
Spiegel is now taking virtual reality outside the hospital to partner clinics such as Attune Health, where many of the patients suffer from joint pain.
We're not just using it as a distraction method, but we are trying to train our patients in deep breathing and biofeedback.
The company Applied VR is developing content to have a VR pharmacy.
You need a wide variety of content because you have a wide variety of people in healthcare. You have from infancy to geriatrics.
The aim is for patients to learn in virtual reality how to use their minds to manage pain and reproduce these skills in the real world. Elizabeth Lee, VOA News, Los Angeles.
어펜딕스에서는 나르시즘이 무엇인지 그리고 치료가 가능한지 알아보도록 하겠습니다. 지금까지 시청하신 것으로 이번 차트 수업이 인정됩니다.
Way before the first selfie, the ancient Greeks and Romans had a myth about someone a little too obsessed with his own image. In one telling, Narcissus was a handsome guy wandering the world in search of someone to love. After rejecting a nymph named Echo, he caught a glimpse of his own reflection in a river and fell in love with it. Unable to tear himself away, Narcissus drowned. A flower marked the spot where he died, and we call that flower the narcissus. The myth captures the basic idea of narcissism, elevated and sometimes detrimental self-involvement. But it's not just a personality type that shows up in advice columns. It's actually a set of traits classified and studied by psychologists. The psychological definition of narcissism is an inflated, grandiose self-image. To varying degrees, narcissists think they're better looking, smarter, and more important than other people, and that they deserve special treatment. Psychologists recognize two forms of narcissism as a personality trait: grandiose and vulnerable narcissism. There's also narcissistic personality disorder, a more extreme form, which we'll return to shortly. Grandiose narcissism is the most familiar kind, characterized by extroversion, dominance, and attention-seeking. Grandiose narcissists pursue attention and power, sometimes as politicians, celebrities, or cultural leaders. Of course, not everyone who pursues these positions of power is narcissistic. Many do it for very positive reasons, like reaching their full potential or helping make people's lives better. But narcissistic individuals seek power for the status and attention that goes with it. Meanwhile, vulnerable narcissists can be quiet and reserved. They have a strong sense of entitlement, but are easily threatened or slighted. In either case, the dark side of narcissism shows up over the long term. Narcissists tend to act selfishly, so narcissistic leaders may make risky or unethical decisions, and narcissistic partners may be dishonest or unfaithful. When their rosy view of themselves is challenged, they can become resentful and aggressive. It's like a disease where the sufferers feel pretty good, but the people around them suffer. Taken to the extreme, this behavior is classified as a psychological disorder called narcissistic personality disorder. It affects 1 to 2% of the population, more commonly men. It is also a diagnosis reserved for adults. Young people, especially children, can be very self-centered, but this might just be a normal part of development. The 5th edition of the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual describes several traits associated with narcissistic personality disorder. They include a grandiose view of oneself, problems with empathy, a sense of entitlement, and a need for admiration or attention. What makes these traits a true personality disorder is that they take over people's lives and cause significant problems. Imagine that instead of caring for your spouse or children, you used them as a source of attention or admiration. Or imagine that instead of seeking constructive feedback about your performance, you instead told everyone who tried to help you that they were wrong. So what causes narcissism? Twin studies show a strong genetic component, although we don't know which genes are involved. But environment matters too. Parents who put their child on a pedestal can foster grandiose narcissism, and cold, controlling parents can contribute to vulnerable narcissism. Narcissism also seems to be higher in cultures that value individuality and self-promotion. In the United States, for example, narcissism as a personality trait has been rising since the 1970s, when the communal focus of the 60s gave way to the self-esteem movement and a rise in materialism. More recently, social media has multiplied the possibilities for self-promotion. Though it's worth noting that there's no clear evidence that social media causes narcissism, rather, it provides narcissists a means to seek social status and attention. So can narcissists improve on those negative traits? Yes. Anything that promotes honest reflection on their own behavior and caring for others, like psychotherapy or practicing compassion towards others, can be helpful. The difficulty is, it can be challenging for people with narcissistic personality disorder to keep working at self-betterment. For a narcissist, self-reflection is hard from an unflattering angle.